In April of 1992, a young man named Chris McCandless walked west along a muddy cut in the brush called the Stampede Trail, near the town of Healy, Alaska. He was smart. He was fit. He was 24 years old, a college graduate who had given away his savings and walked away from his old life on purpose, and he wanted to live off the land. On the way in, he crossed a river called the Teklanika. In late April, it was low and cold, ankle deep in places, an easy wade. He kept going until he found an old, abandoned bus rusting in the tundra, Fairbanks Bus 142, and he made it his home. For most of that summer, he hunted small game and foraged for plants and wrote in his journal. Then, in early July, he decided to walk back out. He returned to the Teklanika, but the river he had stepped across in the spring was gone. In its place ran a gray, swollen, roaring flood, fed by weeks of snowmelt pouring off the mountains. On the 5th of July, he wrote that the country had changed, that frozen ponds had become lakes, and the crossing looked too dangerous to attempt. He stood on the bank, and he did the math, and he understood he could not cross, so he turned around and walked the 8 miles back to the bus. He was less than 10 miles from that river. There were cabins scattered in the region. There was even a river gauging station he never knew existed. Help, in the way we normally think of help, was not that far away. And it did not matter even a little. Back at the bus, out of easy food and slowly weakening, he wrote a note and taped it to the door, saying he was injured, near death, alone, and too weak to hike out, and that this was no joke. Nobody was passing by to read it. Chris McCandless died in that bus in mid-August. The official cause was starvation, though he himself came to believe the seeds he had been eating had poisoned him, a theory later research gave some weight to. Moose hunters found his body on September 6, 1992. He weighed 67 pounds. His last written words thanked the world for a happy life. Here is the part of his story that people miss when they argue about what he did wrong. It was never really the river. The river was just the messenger. What killed him was the distance between him and everyone who would have helped, and the fact that in Alaska, that distance does not close in time. That is the whole story of this video. Before you go in, you need to understand what you are actually walking into, because Alaska is not simply more of the same wilderness you already know. It is a different kind of place, and the difference is not the danger. It is the rescue clock. Everywhere else in America, when things go wrong, a clock starts, and that clock usually saves you. Someone dials 911, an ambulance rolls, a helicopter lifts off, a ranger hikes in. The danger is real, but so is the answer to it, and the answer is usually close and usually fast. In the Alaskan interior, that clock does not run. Not because nobody cares, because the country is simply too big. Alaska is by far the largest state in the country and the least connected by road. Most of the interior cannot be reached by car at all. There are enormous regions, larger than entire states, in the lower 48, with no roads, no cell coverage, no address you could give a dispatcher. The nearest human being who can actually reach you may be a full day of travel away in perfect conditions. And up there, perfect conditions are rare. Every mechanism we are going to walk through, the cold, the water, the animals, the broken down truck, exists down here in the lower 48 too. What Alaska removes is the safety net stretched underneath all of them. That is the reframe. Hold on to it, because it explains everything that follows. And the strange part is how safe the place is made to look. Turn on a television and you will see it. Bush pilots setting float planes down onto glassy blue lakes. Guided lodges with hot coffee and a warm bunk, and a guide who has done this 1,000 times. Reality shows where somebody builds a cabin in the woods and grins at the camera. Cruise ships gliding past tidewater glaciers while passengers eat shrimp on the sun deck. It all sends the same quiet message, that this place has been handled, that people live here just fine, that a plane is always overhead and a warm bed is always a short hop away. There is even a road, one real highway. The George Parks runs up the spine of the state and carries travelers past an alley in comfort, and it fools people into thinking the interior behind that road is reachable the same easy way. It is not. Step a few miles off that pavement and you are standing in country with no signal, no trail, and no way out except the way you came or a plane you have to arrange in advance. The pavement is a thread. On either side of it is a wilderness that does not care how comfortable the drive was. And every piece of that reassuring picture is technically true, which is what makes it so dangerous. The flow planes are real. The lodges are real. The guides really have done it 1,000 times. People really do live out there and thrive. But all of that comfort is a system, built and maintained and staffed, and it only reaches as far as the system reaches. Walk past the edge of it, and you have not walked into a slightly wilder version of the same place. You have walked off the map of everything that was keeping you alive without your noticing. And the modern assumption, the one baked into every one of us now, is the most dangerous thing you can carry into that country. We assume help is a phone call away. We have carried a small glowing rectangle in our pocket our entire adult lives, and it has quietly solved this exact problem every single time. In the Alaskan bush, that rectangle is a flashlight and a paperweight. There are no bars. There is no signal. The single most common mistake up there is not walking toward a bear or misjudging a current. It is believing that the invisible thread connecting you to help is still there, when the truth is you cut it the moment you left the road. So let us walk through how the country actually kills, one clean mechanism at a time. And every one of them is a real, dated case, with a real name where there is one because Alaska deserves the truth. Not a ghost story. Start with the simplest one, the disabled vehicle on the road to nowhere. The most famous stretch of it is the Dalton Highway, 414 miles of mostly gravel running north from near Fairbanks all the way to the oil fields at Dead Horse. People call it the Haul Road. The last real fuel and services sit at a tiny outpost called Coldfoot, around mile 175, and that is not even halfway. Beyond it, you have roughly 240 miles with no gas, no store, no help, and long stretches with no phone signal at all. There is a settlement called Wiseman just up the road with a handful of people in it, and after that, nothing you would recognize as civilization for hours. Now picture a breakdown out there, not a crash, just a dead battery, a flat you cannot fix, a fuel line that quits in the cold. Down here, that is a bad afternoon and a tow truck. Out there, it is something else entirely. Winter-like conditions can hang on the Dalton for most of the year, from roughly August clear through June, leaving July as the only month that reliably feels like summer. The big rigs that own this road are hauling tens of thousands of pounds and physically cannot stop for you. And when someone does get badly hurt on the Dalton, the ambulance is not an ambulance. In September of 2021, a 60-year-old traveler from Texas named Shu Jiang Wang was killed in a head-on collision with a semi on the northern Dalton, and the injured were carried out by a helicopter belonging to the pipeline company and treated by medics from the pipeline pump station. That is who answers out there, not a city fire department, an oil company if you happen to be lucky enough to be near the pipe. The road looks like civilization. It is a thin ribbon of gravel laid across a place that has none. If you are getting something out of this, do us a favor and hit that subscribe button. We put out these wilderness breakdowns every week, and the next one might be the one you watch before your own trip. All right, let us get back to the water, because water is the quietest killer up there, which brings us back to that river. The stream crossing that rises without warning is maybe the most Alaskan death of all, because it turns a good decision in the morning into a trap by afternoon. You cross a braided glacial stream at your ankles at 9 in the morning. The sun climbs. The glaciers upstream give up their meltwater. Rain moves in over high country you cannot even see from where you stand. And you come back that same evening to find the crossing at your chest, gray and fast and loaded with rock and silt that will cut your legs out from under you in a heartbeat. Nothing warned you. The water you trusted simply changed while your back was turned. That is exactly what happened to Chris McCandless. Researchers at Oregon State University later modeled that river and found that the summer of 1992 was colder and wetter than usual. The watershed taking on around 20% more precipitation than average, the runoff arriving in a hard, short surge right at the moment he tried to leave. The river did not single him out. It just did what that river does in a wet year, and the cruel echo of it came decades later. In 2019, a young woman from Belarus named Veronika Nikanova was hiking that same Stampede Trail with her husband, trying to reach the very bus McCandless died in. Crossing that same Teklanika, she was swept under and carried nearly 100 feet downstream before her husband could reach her. By then, she was already gone. The bus itself was finally airlifted out of the wilderness by the National Guard in 2020, after too many people made that pilgrimage and too many of them had to be rescued. One river, one man dead in 1992, one woman dead in 2019 in the same water, and it was never once in a hurry. It just rose. And understand why these crossings are so much deadlier than they look. Glacial water runs thick with silt, so you cannot see the bottom, cannot read the depth, cannot spot the drop-off until you are already in it. It runs just above freezing cold enough to steal the strength from your legs in under a minute. And once it is moving fast, it does not need to be deep to take you. Water at your thighs, moving hard, will lift your feet and put you on your back. And then the current owns you. People drown in Alaska in rivers they could have thrown a rock across. Because they read the width and never thought about the force. The morning crossing lies to you. It tells you the river is a nuisance. By evening, it is a wall of water between you and everything, and it does not open again until the weather upstream decides it should. Now take away the drama entirely, and you get the third mechanism, the one that kills the most careful people. Hypothermia in mild, wet weather. Not a blizzard, not 40 below, just 40 degrees and raining. That is the range where doctors will tell you the danger actually begins, especially once you are wet and the wind finds you. Because water strips heat off your body far faster than cold air alone ever could. And an Alaskan summer is a machine for making you wet. Rain, sweat, a stream crossing, fog that soaks through everything you own. In parts of the state, the temperature sits near that danger zone most of the year, even in the warmest weeks. In September of 2005, a 54-year-old man named Stephen Lynch from Cody, Wyoming, went out from a camp in the Alaska Range southeast of Fairbanks. From what troopers could tell, he only meant to be gone a few hours. He was wearing a cotton sweatshirt, jeans, and a light rain jacket. He lost his way. The temperature was hovering right around 40 degrees, with rain. He spent the night out in it, and by the time troopers and Air Force personnel recovered his body, the cold had already taken him. Cotton is the worst thing you can wear in that weather, because the moment it gets wet, it stops holding heat and starts pulling it straight out of you. And here is the trap inside the trap. As your core cools, your judgment goes first. You get confused. You stop making good decisions right at the moment you need them most. He did not fall. No animal touched him. A comfortable sounding autumn afternoon, and the wrong shirt killed a grown, healthy man. And there was no warm car 40 feet away to duck back into. That is the tax the distance charges on a mistake that would cost you nothing at all back home. The fourth mechanism is the one everybody expects, and it is the one we have to handle most carefully, because the bear is not the monster of this story. The bear is just one more thing that goes wrong, far from help. Alaska is real grizzly and brown bear country, and encounters do happen. But look closely at what actually decides whether you live or die. In September of 2020, an Ohio hunter named Austin Pfeiffer was on a 10-day moose hunt in Wrangell, St. Elias, the largest national park in the country. More than 13 million acres of mixed tundra forest and dense brush. He and a friend had killed a moose the evening before and gone back the next day to pack out the meat. Pfeiffer stayed behind to field dress the animal while his friend carried a load toward camp. A grizzly caught him in a surprise attack, and he was killed. The Park Service later described where it happened. Roughly 50 air miles from the nearest community of Northway, about 130 miles from park headquarters. It was the first fatal bear attack recorded in that park since it was established in 1980. Attacks like that are rare, but when one happens 50 air miles from another living soul, rare and fatal end up meaning the same thing. Now hold that against a case where the distance almost won and did not. In the remote Brooks Range, in the far north of the state, a hunter was mauled by a brown bear about 30 miles from the tiny village of Anaktuvuk Pass, inside the gates of the Arctic country. Local search teams tried to reach him and were turned back by dense fog. So were the state troopers. In the end, it took the Air National Guard flying more than 280 miles, refueling a helicopter in flight between layers of cloud and guiding it through the mountain pass with illumination flares to finally reach him in the dark. More than 36 hours after the attack. He lived, and he lived for one reason. A medical professional happened to be in a nearby hunting party and kept him alive through all those hours, controlling the bleeding until help could physically get there. Same animal, same kind of wound, wildly different endings. And the difference was not courage, and it was not gear. It was who happened to be standing next to him while the clock ran out and the fog pinned every rescue to the ground. And that pattern repeats. Out near Beaver Mountain, roughly 50 miles west of the village of McGrath, a hunter named John Matson was mauled by a wounded grizzly after his party tracked it into heavy brush. His companions got the bleeding under control, and the three of them walked about a mile back to camp. Then they waited. Inclement weather kept a flight from reaching them that day. A helicopter finally got in the next day, flew him to McGrath, and from there, a medical flight carried him more than 200 miles to a hospital in Anchorage. He survived a grizzly attack. And then he had to survive the wait, because the wait is its own separate danger up there. That is the honest truth about the bear. Down here, a mauling is a helicopter ride and an emergency room. In the Alaskan bush, a mauling is a wound plus a countdown, and the countdown is measured in the weather and the miles, not in how badly you want to live. The animal opens the wound. The distance decides what it costs you. The fifth mechanism ties all of the others together, because it is the failure of the one thing that was supposed to save you. In the interior, the airplane is the ambulance. The bush plane and the flow plane are not luxuries up there. They are the road, the 911 call, and the ride home all in one propeller. And the weather grounds them constantly. Fog rolls in, the wind comes up, the ceiling drops, and suddenly the only exit from a place with no roads simply closes. Alaska sees dozens of small aircraft accidents in a single year. In 2022 alone, the state recorded more than 80 general aviation accidents, and several of them were fatal. This is not amateur hour either. In 2023, Jim Twaito, a veteran pilot known from a television show about flying in the Alaskan bush, was killed when a small plane went down near a remote airstrip in what early reports tied to unusually strong winds. The people who fly this country for a living die doing it. In August of 2023, a pilot and a hunter took off in a small Super Cub inside Denali National Park and Preserve, headed for a remote airstrip. The plane went down in a steep, narrow ravine. Both men, the pilot and a 44-year-old hunter from Chugiak named Nicholas Blaze, were killed. And here is the piece that says everything about this place. That pilot had been shuttling hunters in one at a time. He had dropped one man at an airstrip and was supposed to circle back for another. He never came back. That second hunter sat alone at a remote strip as the hours stacked up, finally sending a satellite message to friends, saying his pilot had not returned. And it was the troopers who eventually came and pulled him out. When the plane is your only lifeline, the plane not showing up is not an inconvenience. It is the emergency itself. And when rescuers tried to reach the crash site, the first flight had to turn around because of bad weather. And the ravine was so severe they could not safely recover the men by air at all. It does not always end in death, and that is worth saying plainly because the near misses tell the story just as clearly. In October of 2021, a group of 7 hunters got stranded at a remote camp on the Yukon River in roadless country when the river iced over behind them. They were fine on supplies. They had a satellite communicator, and they were in contact with the outside world. And still they sat there for a week because weather and then a mechanical problem with a Coast Guard helicopter knocked the rescue back day after day after day. One of them later said the plane would be coming, the helicopter would be coming, and it just never showed up. A cargo plane finally had to parachute supplies down to them before a helicopter could get in. Every one of them lived. But sit with that for a second. Prepared, supplied, and talking to rescuers the entire time, and still stuck for 7 days because the country would not let anyone reach them. That is the rescue clock in Alaska. Even when it works, it does not work fast. So why do capable people keep walking into this? Not fools, not tourists in flip-flops. Experienced, careful, physically strong people, the kind who have spent a lifetime outdoors and earned every bit of their confidence. They keep dying up there. And it is worth understanding why, because the reasons are not the ones you would guess. The first reason is the competence trap. The very things that make you good at the outdoors are what set the trap. If you have hunted hard country in Montana or hiked the Rockies for 30 years, you carry a lifetime of evidence that you can handle yourself. Every bit of that evidence is true, and none of it accounts for the missing rescue clock. Your skill was always quietly backstopped by a system that would come and get you if you ever got it wrong. Twist an ankle, misread the weather, run out of daylight, and somebody could reach you before it turned fatal. Alaska keeps the challenge and quietly removes the backstop. And your experience will never once warn you about that, because all of that experience was built in places where the net was always there under you. You cannot feel the absence of something you never had to think about. Then there is optimism bias, the plain human certainty that the bad thing happens to other people. The river held this morning, so it will hold tonight. The weather will surely lift by the time we need to fly. We will be back before dark. The bear will hear us coming and move off. Every one of those is a perfectly reasonable bet in a place with a safety net. Every one of them is a fatal bet in a place without one. And the bet compounds because optimism keeps you moving forward when the smart move is to stop. It talks you across the river you should have respected, keeps you out the extra hour that cost you the daylight, sends you around the next ridge instead of back toward camp. Each small piece of optimism is harmless on its own. Stacked up over a long day, in country where no correction is coming, they are how the trap closes. But the specifically Alaskan error, the one that sets this state apart from every other wilderness on the continent, is not underestimating any single danger. It is underestimating the distance. People arrive braced for the bear and the cold and the current, the things with teeth, and they are right to respect all of them. What they cannot feel in their bones is the isolation itself, the plain physical fact that there is nobody within reach, that the miles between them and help are not miles a rescuer can simply cross on demand. You can prepare for a hazard. You can pack for it, train for it, carry a rifle against it. Distance is not a hazard you fight. It is the condition you are living inside the entire time you are out there, and it is the thing quietly deciding whether any of your other mistakes ever get the chance to be survivable. None of this is trip planning advice, and it is not a reason to be afraid of Alaska. Conditions change by the hour up there. Every route is its own animal, and the only rules that keep working are the boring ones. Tell someone exactly where you are going and exactly when you will be back. Carry a way to call for help that does not depend on a cell tower. And be willing to turn around while turning around is still easy. Before the river rises, before the light goes, before the weather closes the strip. Because people who watch a video like this, one sometimes do go. And we would rather you go smart than go not knowing what you walked into. Here is the last thing to carry with you, and it is the truest thing about that whole country. Chris McCandless stood on the bank of the Teklanika, and the river did not know he was there. It did not rise to trap him. It did not spare him. It simply ran the way it had run for 10,000 years before he was ever born, and the way it is running right now, tonight, in the dark, with no one watching it at all. The bear was not hunting a symbol. The cold was not being cruel. The weather that grounds the plains is not weather that hates you. The land is not against you out there. It is something far more final than that. It is indifferent. It was wilderness long before anyone first tried to cross it, and it will be wilderness long after the last of us stops trying. That is exactly what makes it the last true wild place left in America. And it is exactly why it asks so much of anyone who steps into it. Respect the distance, and Alaska will show you a world that almost no one else will ever get to see. Forget the distance, and the land will not notice, and it will not wait, because no one is coming, not fast enough.